welcome to On the Bauble Podcast, episode 30. I'm your host, Sabasa J. Wada, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be revisiting the Outsider CO format after the pre-release and talk about what we got wrong in our earlier episode and basically more tips to help you for the skirmish season coming up. I know half of it's going to be in sealed, so hopefully our episode will be good intake for that episode. Before we do that, how was your pre-release this weekend?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I played, I believe, 3 pre-releases total. I played Azuri for almost all of it. I tried Arachne here and there. I think deciding between Azuri and Arachne is pretty interesting, but it did seem to be pretty assassin dominated. In my last pre-release, once I lost, I played Benji because I thought the pool was like kind of close and I just wanted to try it out. And I think I went 1-1 with Benji. It felt decidedly mediocre.
That's fair.
But yeah, I had a lot of fun. I opened a cold foil nerve scalpel, which feels like probably a pretty decent pull. I think the M's are pretty hard to get.
Daggers at cold foil is very hard to get. Apparently, they're
Yeah.
short printed more than any other card.
Yeah, I believe they're all like 75% less than other M's.
Do you want to just go into like what your records were in each of your pre-releases?
Yeah, sure. I went 3-1 with Azuri in my first pre-release. I thought the pool was okay. I lost to one of our locals, Eric, with he opened Flick Knives, and the game felt kind of close. And then he had like a pretty good turn off of Flick Knives, and then getting to block with it, and I was just too low. Like the 2 life mattered a lot. Second pre-release, I went 3-2. I think I lost an Assassin Mirror to just like what felt like a better Assassin deck. And then I lost to Eric again. This time I was actually way ahead, and I think I had the stronger deck, but I accidentally sided in 2 red brush offs. Like I had them like sleeved up in case I ever played a Benji, and I guess I just shuffled them into my deck. And at one point I had him down to 1, and all he could do was like a 1-card hand, like spring loaded from Arsenal off of the Tunic, which is like a very good one card hand. And I was at 4, and my hand is 2 red brush offs and a Piece of Mind, a red Piece of Mind, and like I think like a red Feisty Locals. And I just have nothing that I can do with this hand. If I block with Feisty Locals, I have Piece of Minds and brush offs that don't do anything. Brush off can't block the 5 power attack because I have 2 of them for some reason. Like I accidentally sideboard them in, and I have to what I have to end up doing is pitch both of them to Piece of Mind and take 1 damage. And I don't get an Arsenal off Ponder because I already had an Arsenal. It was really bad.
So
don't play brush off. I think the red Piece of Mind like as a 1 of is okay. I really don't like the card in multiples, but the brush offs are pretty poor.
Yeah, maybe better tip would be make sure you double check your deck before shuffling up.
Yes. Yeah, my last pre-release went okay. I think I went 1-1 with Arachne, then 1-1 with Benji, and I ended up feeling like I should have just been playing Azuri with that pool instead of Arachne, but I wanted to try it out.
Yeah, that's fair.
How about you, Jay? How did your pre-release go?
I only got into 1 pre-release. I played Arachne. I went 5-0. 5-0? We had 5 rounds that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I went 5-0. My deck was pretty insane. I think I just had the best pool within the whole room, actually. I opened 2 Codex of Inertia, and I ended up playing Arachne. The Codex of Inertia is unbelievably broken. Like, the card just... There were multiple matches where I thought I was just dead, and I just drew a Codex of Inertia, blocked with 3 cards, played the Inertia just as my last card, and started to get in for damage. Got the Ponder token, got to Arsenal, get a 4-card hand again. It just like got me back in the game. And then because I had 2, there was a game where I had to draw both back to back essentially, and I did, so I won the game. So it's yeah, I think my initial impression of this format, at least in sealed, is the codexes are quite broken.
Yeah, they're just so much value. Like Inertia and Frailty are basically just 2-for-1s at worst, and I guess the blood rot one is a blood rot token that gives you a ponder afterwards, which is still pretty good.
It's basically a 2-for-1 as well. It's like
Yeah.
it does deal 2 damage, draw a card. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so I think I tend to agree. The codexes are crazy value. The 2-for-1 is very good, especially in such a like the matchups were in general, I think really, really grindy, often going to second cycle and very, very value oriented with a lot of cards. Like it is hard to get the value out of your cards, and your cards are so often worth so little. Like a lot of times if I was doing like 8 damage with 3 cards or something, like it feels like that feels like an amazing turn, even though 8 damage off 3 cards is actually like pretty far below rate in basically every other format.
Yeah, the cards in this format, trying to even like get 2 points of value per card is somewhat difficult.
Yeah, especially with the spiders bites devaluing the block of all your cards, it just makes it very, very hard to get the value out of everything. And kind of something that I think Jay and I mentioned and we got right the about the sealed format. We definitely didn't get everything right. We thought Assassin wouldn't come together as much as it did, and it turns out to be the most consistent. But I think one thing that is right is that most decks are not that good at playing out their hands, and so they need to block. And I think that we overlooked at how good that makes the assassin spiders bites, because assassin spiders bites are almost like effectively presenting like 2 points of value even though they only do 1 damage, because often like if you double spiders bite your opponent has to block one like with an entire card, or if you spiders bite into something you're getting some like -1 or at least like -1 or -2 if they block with 2 cards on the next attack. And so in a lot of cases, I feel like the spiders bites are actually doing a lot more like 2 to 3 points of value rather than just the one that they say on the front side of the card.
I don't know. I have nothing else to add for Spider's Bite.
They were pretty impressive. I thought that they kind of like overperformed in general, right?
Yeah, I think Spider's Bite's a good card in this format. There's a lot of attack actions in this format, and there's not that many non-attack actions, and for that reason, I think playing any of the other daggers is wrong.
Yeah, I think you really want to be playing spiders bites, even if you open up one of the M's. I don't think you want to be playing them. Most of the cards that block 3 in this format are attacks. And I think that the any of the block threes that aren't attacks are really premium. So that was maybe like one of the big takeaways I had from the weekend was that all of the block 3 attack reactions are nuts, regardless. Like the text almost doesn't even matter on the card, although the text was often pretty relevant, especially on the reds. But any of the block 3 attack reactions were just insane, and same thing for the defense reactions.
Yeah, as well as Comp to Fight, which is just the 3 block as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One interesting interaction with the reaction specifically is a lot of people are playing red feisty locals, which is the 0 for 3 that if it's blocked by an action, it gets +2. I think that the card in general is actually pretty playable in sealed, especially in Azuri when you can attack reacted in. It's not like amazing, but it's like a solid role player. But being able to block that with a reaction and not trigger the +2 is really, really good.
Ah, I didn't even realize that. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Wow, that's pretty funny how the attack reaction and I guess the defense reactions as well is pretty good against that card.
Yeah, for some reason I realized the defense reaction and I didn't realize the attack reaction right away, but then it came up in a couple of my games and I was like, "Oh." I'll say that the hands where you have a block 3 that doesn't get affected by spider's bite feel significantly different than the hands where you don't have access to that, because when you have that you can largely just ignore the spider's bites and then block with those unconditional 3 blocks. Whereas if you have a handful of attacks and you cannot play them all, you're kind of often forced to block one of the spider's bites somewhere.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I was playing Arachne, so I actually didn't come across that problem too often. I was able to play out my hand pretty consistently. My pool, as I said, my pool was very above rate by a lot. I had
Mhm.
5 red 3 stealth cards, which helps a lot in just playing out my hand, honestly.
Mhm.
And I had multiple. What is that card called? Scrap into pieces? No, that's not what it's called.
Is
Scrap
it the
to
1 for 4
Yes,
that
that's the
gets
one for
+1 and
four.
go again if you banish a
Yeah,
1 power?
I had two of those, I had a red and a yellow one, and just multiple blue stealth cards that I just wanted to block with just to give that card go again. Honestly, like, a lot of my hands were just like, my opponent would attack me, and I'm like, I just need to block with this card so then my hand is smoother, like a blue
Yeah.
infect or something like that. Just like, please, I need to throw this in my graveyard so that I get these bonuses later in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't really want to be playing them as cards most of the time. The one value is pretty weak.
Hmm.
So I think one question that I had come up myself and also some of the players at the event were, I think everybody understood that Assassin's really powerful, but I think some people were trying to decide, like, how do I choose between Arachne and how do I choose between Azuri? So like when do you think you want to be, let's say, Arachne over Azuri? Or like how do you make the decision of which one you want to be?
I'll go first. I tend to just think that Uzuri is better than Arachne, in sealed at least, where we don't get like a very high density of 0 for 3 stealth cards. And if you just don't have a high density of 0 for 3 stealth cards, I feel like there's no reason to be Arachne. And you lose 1 life for being Arachne as well. And Uzuri's ability is going to be somewhat relevant, more so than Arachne's a lot of the time. And giving a yellow stealth card go again is not that good. So I think I would just default to Uzuri if possible.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree that Azuri is where you want to be most of the time. The attack reaction ability actually really overperformed. I thought pretty consistently. If nothing else, in the end game, you could often, like, if your opponent's at 3, you could often just present a stealth attack and sort of make them respect your 6 power, which I don't think they always should, but I think that there's like a very strong temptation to respect that 6 power, and you just get like a whole card in Arsenal worth of value out of it when they do that. And I think even if that's all that it does that once in the game, it's like already pretty strong.
Yeah, you're generating like 3 points of value with that one
Mhm.
ability, or 2 points of value, I guess, in this format, which is big deal. Like, it's hard to get
Yeah.
that extra 2 or 3 points of value. When you can get it, it's worth it's worth like it. Urzuri's like a 23 health character instead of like a 20 health character. Honestly,
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. And I think for Arachne, one of the things I found was like, I think that Prowl in particular is really an Arachne card you want to look at that I play in probably red or yellow. I think being able to push your next, you need a lot of stealth cards for it to function, but if you can go like Prowl into one of the ones that has a good on hit, so I would consider like the Frailties or the Blood Rot to be pretty powerful on hits. If you can push those to 4, um, that's really really strong.
you need to open prowls. Like, it's and
Yeah,
honestly, like, the yellow prowl is still not that great. So like, it really needs
yeah,
to be the red prowl, red and blue prowls.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm still pretty happy playing the yellow, especially if you have strong reds. But I agree that the red and the blue are the most desirable ones.
As we keep on saying, like, when you do have these cards, I think Arachne is better. If you have like maybe 2 red prowls and like two or three other red stealth cards, then I think just go for it. Like, play multiple red stealth cards, play blue stealth cards, and hopefully open like a scrap into pieces. Is that what it's called? Looking for a scrap. Sorry, scrap.
Looking
Looking
for a
for a
scrap.
scrap. Yeah. Then
Yeah.
the more consistently you can be attacking 3 or 4 times with Arachne, the better that deck becomes.
Yes, and I do think you need to kind of be able to. I think one of the things that really struck me when I was playing my sealed pool, my most recent sealed pool on the Monday, where I played 2 games as Arachne and went 1-1, was that even though I think I did have 5 red stealth cards and quite a number of attack reacts to pair with it that were pretty good. Like I had 2 spikes, for example. Despite all of that, I think you want some extra go again. Like the looking for a scrap is really important, for example, because it feels like if the game grinds out, Azuri ends up outvaluing you and like in terms of like cards in deck because you don't get to use the attack reaction to like threaten extra cards and you're just kind of playing out your stealth cards and then once they're gone your deck doesn't do that much. So I think that you really do want multiple ways to go wide and to feel like you're actually going to be able to close out the game in order to be Arachne. And I think that if you just have this like okay-ish Arachne pool, like it's still a fine deck, but when you play the Assassin Mirror, Azuri is gonna preserve cards in deck a little better than you are, which is tough.
Yeah, they're just gonna fatigue you out.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the main reason to be Arachne is if you have Codex of Inertia. Uh,
Mm.
Codex of Inertia, you need to have Go Again, and if you don't have Go Again playing Codex of Inertia, you're gonna run into a lot of problems with Azuri, where you might have to, like, your turns will be not as impactful. Where I had one game with Arachne where one of like someone looked over to my game and they said, "Wow, that looks like a 5 board." Like I had
Yeah.
maybe like 7 cards on the what's it called on the chain link, and I was like, and then my last attack was an attack for 6, so it was like 3 stealth, play inertia, get another card, looking for a scrap 4 again, spider's bite 2 for 1, attack for 6 from arsenal with codex, and it was just like, and then draw a card arsenal, and it's just
Yeah.
you can do some very broken things.
Yeah, and I'd imagine Frailty also. Like, I think Frailty will
Yeah,
play well in either Assassin, but I think similarly will have probably stronger play patterns with all the Go Again.
let's move on and talk about. I want to talk about rares and mythics.
Okay.
I think in this format, rares and mythics are significantly better than the commons.
Yeah, and this is something that I think a lot of people familiar with Magic are maybe used to in that game, but we haven't really seen in Flesh and Blood. Like, often the powerful commons are really good. Like, you think back to even as recently as Dynasty or Uprising.
Uprising.
Uprising. I always get those sets mixed up. You have like Aether Ice Vein, Blaze Headlong, Ronin Renegade, Aether Hail. Like, those are all just commons. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of the best cards are just commons in that set. And that doesn't feel like the case here. I agree. The rares feel like rares. They feel, when you have them, you're usually pretty happy to have them.
It's mostly the mythics. The mythic seems significantly better than the commons. Obviously, I keep on saying the codexes. The codexes are broken. I think even all the generic M's, other than maybe Burdens of the Past, which is still okay because it's just a 0 for block 3. So the generic mythics, we have Amnesia, Down and Dirty, which is a 2 for 6. Amnesia actually also blocks for 3 for some reason, which is insane. We have Gore Belching, which is like a really strong card if you are playing Assassin's blue pitch 1 attacks. Give and Take is
Mm-hmm.
a fine card if you just want to not fatigue. It's Premeditates, Insane, and Ranger. It's just like all of these cards are like, unlike an Uprising where we were saying stay away from the mythics, just don't play it, or get them late, get them on the wheel kind of thing, and then play them if it works. I think in this format, you're gonna be like, when you open the mythics, you have to look at them and be like, is this a good enough reason to go into it? Something like Collapsing Trap for Riptide. It's we had one player at the pre-release do pretty well with Riptide, where basically he was collapsing trap people and then fatiguing out after they lost like 2 or 3 cards from their hand. Is there even a bad mythic in this set?
There's a few. Like, I think Amplifying Arrow is, or my spoiler card is not great in this limited format. Um,
Oh, we have the ninja
some of the
ones.
equipment is not great. Yeah, the ninja ones seem kind of.
Yeah, some of the ninja M's are pretty medium.
I guess like the Benji one's not bad. Wander with Purpose.
Yeah, I think Wander with Purpose is a pretty good card, honestly. But Visit the Floating Dojo, that card's a little bit bad.
It's probably okay in draft, honestly. Turns on your Kodachis, and then you can just in the late game put a Surging Strike and a Whelming on top or something. It depends how fast the draft format is by comparison. I do think it will be faster, but I could see it like being a sideboard card. But I agree, it's not crazy. It's not that good. So I think the next thing that we wanted to talk about is I think a lot of people understand that Assassin's very good, and Sealed especially. And I think that we're going to see more chance for the Rangers and Ninjas to do well in draft. But we want to talk a little bit about some of the cards that we felt overperformed, and then also some of the cards that we felt underperformed based on our first couple times playing with the cards in our sealed pre-releases.
What do you want to start off with?
So we kind of already talked about the reactions and the come to fights that block 3 and are not attacks. Like anything that blocks 3 and is not an attack, you want to be playing in your deck pretty much 100% of the time. They're just very, very strong. And I think that they are. I think if a deck has significantly more copies of that than another one, that's like a pretty strong reason to be a deck. Like if I notice, like if I'm assassin and by being assassin I get like 4 more reacts that block 3, like I'm probably going to be assassin for that reason.
Yeah, that's true. It's honestly, I can't really think of a reason to be ninja in this format right now.
Yeah, I think you would need a very particular pool, and in fact I haven't seen it come together. The frailty also hurts ninja so much. Like the kodachis are really powerful, and there's a number of ways to give frailty. And ninja just, we mentioned it, but they really, really cannot block. And when you're also not able to use kodachis to kind of like smooth out some of your less good draws, it feels real bad.
Yeah, if we didn't have frailty, I think ninjas will be pretty good. But it's just that sometimes their turn just ends when you get a frailty token.
Yeah. And in general, I think that all the things that generate frailty kind of overperformed. I found, like we talked about Death Touch being a strong card. A lot of people are talking about Death Touch being a strong card. And it is, but I was surprised at how often I was choosing frailty on that because like it might be a function of playing it in Azuri, where when you sneak it in, it's probably getting in for damage, which probably means they didn't block very much. And then when they have a big hand, turning off their spider's bites often just makes it super hard for them to ever get value out of their cards. So Death Touch and anything else that gives frailty, like the stealth attacks that give frailty or the spike with frailty, are all like very, very good. Like I felt like frailty might be like almost better than blood rot sometimes.
I think I agree on that. Obviously, if your opponent is at low life, if you just give them a blood rot pox, they get handcuffed like
Mm-hmm.
quite majorly. But if they're at a healthy enough life total where they can just take the 2 damage, if you give them a frailty token, it'll gain you more life than it'll deal than the blood rot pox will deal your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I found with the Blood Raw Pox is that it actually sometimes makes their hand smoother when they can pitch a blue to prevent 2. That's what I found at least, where someone gave me a Blood Raw Pox token with Death Touch, and then I looked at my hand and I was like, I wasn't able to block the touch because it was an Azuri activation. And then now my 2 block blue card that it wasn't really it turns into a spider's bite or a pitch it to prevent 2. And then I'm like, wait, I just pitched this end of my turn, prevent 2, and then like my the value of my hand got better because they gave me a blood raw pox token. Where if they just gave me a frailty token, then my hand would have just then my blues would have rotted in there. And honestly, I would have had to attack for with the spider's bite for 0 just to get the blues out of my hand anyways.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that and had similar experiences. The other thing that came up for me a number of times was because Spider's Bite costs 2, if you pitch a blue, you often have 1 floating. And if you end up getting a Blood Rot, like this happens largely with Blood Rot trap because it happens on your turn and you're not expecting it. If they Blood Rot trap you and you get very good card, by the way. But if you get that Blood Rot on your turn, you can often just activate one of the, what are they called? Is it the Seeker's equipment? Is that what they're
Yeah,
called?
they're called the Seekers. The generic Seekers prevent 1. Yeah.
Yeah, so you often just have 1 floating because you like dagger, have 1 floating, attack with a stealth card and Azuri it in. And then you can just pitch that 1 to the Seekers before. You have to do it before your end because like during end phase when Blood Rot triggers, you actually don't have priority. So technically you have to do it before, but then you just get to opt 1 and prevent 1 damage and get value out of that Seekers, which again feels like it kind of mitigates how good Blood Rot is. Like Blood Rot's still very good, but I just was impressed at how good Frailty is.
Let's move on to talk about some other cards. You want to move on to, let's say, Hurl. Hurl's a card that was, I think, was one of my favorite cards. I think it is one of my favorite cards in this set.
Hurl's just it's an assassin ninja attack action. It's a head jab, and you can pay 1 to throw a dagger, and it has the same, like, if the dagger deals damage, then it counts as having hit, which turns, if you throw a spider's bite, it turns on the spider's bite effects. I think that this card is pretty crazy in all pitches. Like the red one being a head jab with upside is pretty insane, and then the yellows and blues you can pretty comfortably pitch for like a late game sequence. I had a game against Eric where my hand was essentially the sequence that I did was Spider's Bite. He didn't block it. Then I played Hurl and hurled the dagger with the 1 floating. And so now his stuff blocks for 1. He couldn't block the Hurl. And then he's at 4, and I present 4 with Virulent Touch. The 4 for 0 can only be played from Arsenal, and if they block it, they get a Blood Rot Pox. And he has to block that card, and but he's only blocking for 1, and he like still gets a blood rod. Like, it was just super, like, I think you can set up these end games with Hurl where they just don't have any good options. Like you have like pseudo unblockable. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and the damage from Hurl's hard to stop. Like, you need to have a
Yeah,
Seekers. And a lot of the times, a lot of people don't put in multiple Seekers. And I think it's right not to put in multiple Seekers, even if you open them. But it's real, right? Like, it's the one damage unblockable is pretty real.
it matters a lot. And one thing I'll say about the Virulent Touch, which I mentioned in that line, is the blues and yellows were real good. I felt like they were almost better than the reds, just because you get to pitch them, and then you kind of have this really funny mini game in the end game where you can attack with a stealth card, and you just have like a blue Virulent Touch in your hand, and if they double block it and you give them a Blood Rot Pox, it just feels like such a blowout. And if they don't block it and they're chipping damage and you get an arsenal, this thing that's unblockable, that's like also really good in the end game. So I actually found like the blues and yellows coming back second cycle to almost be just better than the red ones.
I didn't open any touches, so I didn't get to play with it. But I'm actually pretty excited to try those ones out.
I think the red's good too. Like, I think you just play that card, but at first I was like, oh, the red one's the best by a lot because it hits for a breakpoint. But the more that I played with the card, the more I realized that didn't matter as much.
I think there's one interaction I wanted to talk about that I don't have in the notes. It's a sneak attack. My favorite line this weekend with sneak attack was is have a spider's bite on the chain link, and then attack with sneak attack. The leg piece that I got, the only leg piece that I opened was Fleetfoot Sandals, which is the attack reaction, destroy Fleetfoot Sandals, target attack with 1 or less base power gains go again. I think this leg piece is very bad in general, but combined with sneak attack, you can target the dagger that's on the chain link that's not sneak attack to buff sneak attack by 4 power. And I got to sneak in 4 damage, I think 3 times during my pre-release. And when you sneak in 4 damage with a dead leg piece, it seems pretty broken, honestly.
Yeah, that's a that was quite the line I saw. I heard you do that to Ian, and then Ian did that to me, and it felt really bad. So yeah, definitely like a neat trick that you can do, that you can attack react something that isn't the current chain link, which normally you never want to do. But actually, wait. Oh yeah, because you've activated this chain link.
Yeah, you just need
It
to
doesn't have to
activate.
be to its own.
No, you just need to activate Fleetfoot Sandals on the. So you have to attack with sneak attack, and then activate Fleetfoot Sandals during sneak attack's attack.
Yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't have to be to the specific attack, because I guess it's like the same reason why like you can Azuri and sneak attack, because you still activated it at this chain link even though it wasn't targeting sneak attack. Yeah, that should work.
Yeah, so as long as you have a target with Fleetfoot Sandals, you can do this play. If you don't have a target with Fleetfoot Sandals, you can't do this play. But most of the time, you can set it up, because if you're assassin, you have daggers, and daggers is a one base power attack.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Other overperformers, I think anything with Go Again was like pretty good. Ravenous Rabble was quite strong, and even Seek Horizon, it's a 4 for 0 at red, and you can as an additional cost, you can put a card on top of your deck, and if you do, it gains Go Again. The decks are often just so bad at using their hands that Seek Horizon is surprisingly good.
Yeah, it's pretty funny where when you are just looking for raw damage, if you pitch a blue to attack with a spider's bite, you pitch the card to do 1 damage. Whereas then if you top deck that card to attack with Seek Horizons and have like another 0 for 3 in hand, it's a 7 point swing, then a 4 point swing with like Spider's Bite, then Seek Horizon for no go again. It's just like raw damage is sometimes very strong in this format.
Similarly to that, just cards with big attack values were pretty good. So like cut down to size, spring loaded, pretty much like any of like the 5 and 6 power attacks are pretty solid. I think that the one that, what is it called? The generic that gets weaker when it's blocked is maybe the worst of the bunch. Freewheeling Renegades, that one has felt like a little bit awkward to me. Although Spider's Bite into Freewheeling Renegades is like a pretty decent curve, so I think it's passable, but it's maybe the weakest of the bunch. But all of the kind of like chunky attacks like Destructive Deliberation that makes the Ponder, or Wreak Havoc that's like the pseudo CNC, or Cut Down to Size that makes them discard if they have 4 or more in hand, all those kind of like 2 power attacks were pretty good. And Spring Loaded might be bad Critical Strike, but bad Critical Strike is pretty strong in this format. So
That's so unfortunate.
and if you arsenal it, you can play it off the Threadbare Tunic and just have like a 1 card hand that does 5, and that is real good. You're really doing it when you get to do that.
Oh my god. This format it's actually really interesting. I enjoy this format because of like how low power all the cards are. The format's nice and grindy and you get to like play out multiple turns. Unlike Uprising where sometimes you're playing like Fi and then the game ends in 2 turns. That's almost never gonna happen here.
At least in sealed.
Yes, at least in sealed. In sealed so far. Yes. I guess in draft I don't know yet, but in sealed that's not gonna happen.
I feel like I don't know how much it comes together, but I feel like the ceiling on Katsu, if you get a very good version of that deck with Bonds of Ancestry, could be potentially pretty disgusting.
Oh my god, turn 1 bond. If my opponent turn 1 Bonds of Ancestry, I'm gonna be so mad. If they go, oh my god, they can go first. They can block with a combo card, and then turn like on the first turn of Katsu, they can Bonds of Ancestry combo you. Oh my god, if they do that, that's so gross.
Yeah, it's really strong. So I think Assassin and Ranger are gonna it's gonna be I'm really curious to see how they play in draft, because I think that draft is gonna be where they really shine. They just need a little bit more specific cards than Assassin. Like Assassin can kind of play everything and it gets the 2 sets of dual class cards, which is really good. But I think in draft where like Assassin's maybe a little bit more contested and you can kind of sculpt your deck a little bit more and get more access to go again. That's really the thing that Ranger and Ninja both seem to need, is lots of go again to be able to use bigger hands, or at least like enough go again to be able to use bigger hands. And in draft, I think you'll be able to get that a lot more reliably. Okay, on to underperformers.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So the first one is Bleed Out. I actually got to open this card multiple times. It is a assassin ninja attack reaction that comes in for 4 with go again, and it costs 2 resources, but its cost is reduced by X, where X is the damage dealt by daggers this combat chain. I think that this card is very, very good in Ninja. Like when I played it in my Benji deck, it was kind of it's just like a 4 for 0. Like it's basically what's the uprising card? Blaze Headlong. Like it felt like Blaze Headlong. But specifically in Assassin, where your daggers are expensive, this card is really awkward because your opponents are also incentivized to block your daggers. So if you like it often makes your turns bad, because if you pitch a blue to dagger to get the cost reduction on this and they block it, you can't play this card anymore because it still costs 2. And I think like the fact that depending on your opponent's decisions, that your resource curve just doesn't work out anymore and makes Bleed Out like a little bit awkward. It's still playable. You can play it with like Shorp and Sharp on your dagger to push through extra damage and get the cost reduction. So I think you can play this card, but it's just be careful with it. It is it can be quite awkward.
Just looking at this card, if you just like remove that line of text, like the first three lines of text, this is a 2 for 4 go again. It's not that good.
And I think it's like really different in Ninja where they don't want to block your daggers compared to Assassin where your daggers cost 2 resources and they do want to be blocking it. Like that is a massive, massive difference. So I think it is more of an Assassin card than it is more of a Ninja card than it is an Assassin card.
That's very fair. That's very fair. I guess if you are like really looking for playables, it's okay, but would be wary of them.
Yeah, like I think the red one specifically is playable, especially it especially does pair well with Shorp and Sharp, where if you can go like dagger, dagger, they block the second dagger, then you Shorp and Sharp to attack react over it, and you probably push like at least 2 damage because if they block with a 3 block on your dagger, then you'll be blocking for 2 because the first dagger hit, and then you'll get in for 2 extra damage. So it's like very Shorp and Sharp makes this card a lot better, and I think it is something to. It's powerful enough that it's worth setting up, but I think you want to be looking for stuff like that rather than just like throwing it in your assassin deck because it looks like a good card.
I think another card I want to talk about related would be Plunge. Plunge is really bad in Assassin. I actually like the blue one to turn on looking for scraps, but the red and yellow one, I feel like they're pretty weak. This one is a 1 for 3 go again, and when it hits your next dagger this turn, gets +1. But the on hit to give it +1 is very hard to like making a spider's bite hit for 2. They just block it, and it didn't it or they just block the plunge because you have to attack with the plunge before your spider's bite. So in Ninja, I think this would be a lot better, but in Assassin, I wouldn't be looking into playing too many plunges in your deck.
Yeah, I think you can play a few. I found the red one to be like okay. You can just mostly because it fits nicely with the dagger, so you can do like 3. They want to block it, then 1, and then you can like play a stealth card in Azuri or something like that. So it can be okay as a way to kind of push damage in the late game and push multiple attacks, but
It's a little awkward.
definitely a little awkward. Like it's not. It feels more like I would say like a 30th, like a 29th or 30th card, except that I think in this format you're often playing maybe like 35 ish cards, 35 to 40.
I think you end up playing this card just because you need more than 30 cards in your deck. Oh, I guess we didn't even talk about that yet. Let's talk about that first.
Mm-hmm.
How many cards are you playing in your deck right now?
I think around that 35 mark. I was playing more like 40 for a little bit and playing some like to get to 40, I was often putting in some like pretty weak cards. Like maybe I put in like a blue destructive deliberation, which is like the 3 power make a ponder on hit. And that's just these like really mediocre 2 costs attacks or like these really mediocre attacks that don't have much upside unless you are desperate for the blue you don't really want to have in your deck. And I was finding that when I had 40 cards, while it mitigated fatigue, like I wasn't decking out, it also just meant that I was drawing a lot more bad hands. And I think you don't want to be playing like truly awful cards, but if the card is close to playable, I think you probably want it in your deck is what I would say.
That's fair. That's fair.
What about you?
As I said, I only had one pool. My pool was, as I said, it's very above rate. I played exactly 30, and then I went up to 33 against the Riptide Fatigue deck. But that's also just because I wanted to draw my Codex of Inertia as early as possible. And I didn't want any of like the yellow stealth cards. I just wanted every card to have like high enough impact and just play out my whole hand to do as much damage as possible. And my deck was very good at converting every card into like 3 points of damage, which was somewhat insane, honestly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the more streamlined your deck is, the more you want to run like 30 or close to 30. Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't want the yellow 3 blocks just because like my deck was better than that, right? Like I could convert my cards into 3 points without doing that. So then, and every time I Codex of Inertia from the top of my deck, a bad card I can't play, that's truly awful. So I wanted to mitigate that as well. And I think this would only work if you have 30 cards that are going to convert into 3 points of damage every time. When it does, I think you just play 30 cards. Don't fall into the trap of playing bad cards in your deck if you can just put 30 premium cards in your deck.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of like part of what I was talking about, where I think you don't want to put a lot of the like two blocks that don't have much upside. I think you really want to avoid having these in your deck because as much as fatigue is a concern, if you do play somebody that has like a little more streamlined deck, which I think if it's like a longer sealed event, like a skirmish that's coming up and you get to a later round, you can expect to see a pretty strong pool. Like I would lean towards their pool being pretty good. If you're just drawing all these two blocks, like they're just so bad to block with, especially if there's like even one spider's bite and then you're using this card to block for one. Like you won't fatigue, but you will just get run over if they're even close to on rate.
Yeah, they're like that was my experience. Like a lot of my opponents were just blocking for one or two, and all my cards were better than that. So most of my games weren't close.
Yeah, yeah. If you're just consistently getting 3 points of value out of a card and your opponent has a bunch of two blocks, then they're not going to be winning that game.
Okay, let's continue on with the underperformers. Did we talk about infectious host yet?
No. So infectious host is a rare. It's a 0 for 4 that blocks 2, and it says when this attacks a hero, if you control a frailty token, you give them a frailty under their control, and it's the same thing for inertia and blood rot pox. I thought that this card was going to be pretty strong, and I found that I actually had this in all of my pools or two of my pools, so I got to play with it a lot, and I just never triggered it. So that's like pretty low sample size, but considering the number of assassin mirrors I was playing and having like this card in my deck in like across like 10 games and I never triggered it, makes me feel like it is pretty close to just a vanilla 4 for 0, which is like at red, which is fine, but meh.
I think a vanilla 0 for 4 is okay in this format if you're playing
Yeah.
Arachne.
Yeah, maybe the red specifically is okay, and it's like an okay arsenal card, and you can try and get value out of it. But I think that the yellow and the blue are not great.
Yeah, this card blocking for 2 is a major problem. Like you'd rather just have a 3 block, honestly.
Yeah, blocks for 2, and like the 4 power attack is fine, but I also just felt like you often have better attacks that you want to be playing, and so because like you'd often rather be playing like one of your big attacks or like some of your stealth stuff that threatens on hits. And I just ended up feeling like the 4 for 0 was like often one of the weaker attacks, but because it's a 2 block attack, you just like it just gets stuck in your hand.
It's probably comparable to like Seek Horizon, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's like truly unplayable. 4 for 0 is still okay stats. Just the text on this, I think, is again small sample size, but I'm suspecting that it is pretty fringe. I don't think you'll get the extra value all that often, especially because like sometimes these ailments come from traps, and like sometimes you just like can't like I don't know like it's just very hard to make it work out. You don't always know that you're going to have it.
When you do have it though, this card's pretty good.
Yes, yeah. I think if you ever do get the value, it's like pretty crazy, but it's just
That's not gonna happen often.
yeah, yeah.
Do you think this might be like a sideboard option against Ranger?
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't play. I actually never played against any Rangers in all of my pre-release, so I don't know for sure. But it does seem like Ranger has a lot of ways to give these debuffs onto you, either through they have like the cycle of arrows that give them, and they also have the cycle of the laces. Those are rare, but still the
Mm-hmm.
pumps that give them, and then they have
Yeah,
like
and the
ruin
traps.
touch, death touch, the traps. Yeah, I think that is all pretty real.
Yeah, so maybe it's like more of a sideboard card than a main board card.
Yeah, I think so. And I think similarly, toxicity, pretty good ranger card, specifically in Azalea. That the losing 5 life if something hits and you can like give something dominate is a real way to close out a game and in matches that can go to fatigue. So I think ranger has some cool stuff, but yeah, needs very specific cards to work.
Yeah, more excited for it in draft than in sealed, honestly.
Yeah, I had a number of cool pools that were really close. Like I had a pool with some very good pumps, and then like I think I had like 6 or so pumps that were pretty good, and then I had just not enough arrows, and then I had one that had like it had the most broken arrow pool I've ever seen. Like I think I had 4 red Withering Shot, the one that gives frailty on hit, and I had like two yellows or something.
That just 4 red arrows seems broken.
And a lace, but I also think like the frailty is like particularly good. But then I realized that because I only had 2 pumps, like all my deck is ever going to be doing is attacking with 1 arrow per turn. Like I just didn't have any go. I had like 4 cards with go again in my pool. So,
Oh, I see.
and it's not like I could play like 40 cards. Like I was like pretty close to 30, and it was just like I'm just gonna fatigue out. So yeah, I think Ranger needs like very specific stuff. Those go agains on either stuff like Ravenous Rabble or the pumps is pretty important.
Yeah, I can't even think of like what they actually really want. I guess it has to just be the pumps. Like that you need a lot of good red pumps and a good red arrow count.
Yeah, I think what we said originally is pretty close to true. Like I think you want like 5 to 7 pumps and you want like 12 good arrows. And that's just
Not gonna happen in sealed.
yeah, it's just really hard and sealed. It's actually even like the same thing in Tails if you think back. Like Lexi didn't come together that much in sealed either.
Did it ever come together? I don't think I've ever had a Lexi pool in sealed.
Yeah. I think I had one like on my pre-release and that was it. So yeah, I think that just might be like the fate of Ranger because you're kind of this like A plus B deck where you want like your pumps and your arrows and you need a mix of both of them. And if you just don't have them, your deck doesn't work. So
Hmm.
maybe just not a good sealed deck.
I kind of wish that like in maybe like in like future limited sets, like instead of like printing every card at like red, yellow, blue, maybe just like not have some cards in blue or not have some cards in red, just like so like
Yeah.
Ranger can get like a pool with like 7 red arrows because the blue ones don't exist in the set. So then you open more red ones.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I noticed they experimented with this a little bit this set. Like in particular, the laces only come in red, but they're rares, so they're a little hard to open. And similarly, the assassin ranger traps, so that's like the blood rod trap, frailty trap, and inertia trap, also only come in reds. I don't know if there's other examples of this, but I've been noticing that they're doing a little bit of this. I think the spikes work this way too, right? The spikes only come in red.
Yeah, the assassin spikes. Yeah.
So I agree that I think that this is really cool because that's just like whenever you open those cards, you're just super happy with them. And I think that that's nice. And I would like to see them. I think it's a good change that they did that, but I agree that they could maybe even go a little bit further. And that might be a way to balance out the consistency. But then I'm sure they also need to like consider draft too. And maybe if it's just like all red, it's too consistent in draft. I don't know.
Have you drafted the set yet?
No, I have not. Pure speculation.
It's next week, right?
This weekend it releases, and then I think we have Armory starting on Monday and Wednesday for draft. So definitely looking forward to drafting this set.
Yeah, same here, same here. Okay, let's move on. Did you want to talk about brush off, or are you okay with that now?
I think I already talked about the card during my pre-release, but I think Brush Off I think it's okay against Benji, and I don't know if I would play it anywhere else. It's just you have so much chance to get blown out. Like even against like Arachne, you can be like, oh, I can block their 3 power stealth, but then if they just spike and you get no value out of your brush off, like it feels like you lose the game.
Yeah, it's high risk, no reward.
It has some reward, but it's like not enough. I think I would never play more than one, and I think at the moment I would only want it against Benji, but I don't know. That could change.
Benji's has some ways to buff. No, a reaction step.
They have short and shard, I guess.
And man, you can still get short and sharped by Benji.
Yeah, maybe it's just bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I would try and not play a brush off unless you know your opponent's deck.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards like not trying not to include this card. Speaking of like other generic pseudo defense reacts, what are your thoughts on Peace of Mind?
I'm impressed with Peace of Mind. I thought this card was actually pretty decent.
Hmm.
Like, I think if you have a Seeker's equipment, I think the one copy of Red Peace of Mind is actually pretty decent. Where you pitch a blue Peace of Mind, get a Ponder token, and use the Seekers to up one. And then you get to see what card you are going to Ponder draw into. I think is a solid line that I saw multiple times during the weekend.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. You do want to think about your blue count when you're playing this card. If you are, I found some of my pools struggling a little bit with blue count, and if you are low on blues, this card gets a lot worse. Like if you ever have to pitch two cards for this, it's kind of a disaster. So you do want the blue count to go with it, but I think that it's pretty strong.
Yeah, I think the first one's good. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's just like it's an instant. So your opponent Azuris you, and then you get the peace of mind to block it out or something. It's sweet. I think just like this card is fine. It's not like it's not good. Like I'm not saying peace of mind is like an insane card in this format, but I feel like your opponent's not going to respect this card that often, and when you have it when they don't respect it, you can blow them out, which is I think is a good. I think is which makes this card a
yeah, I agree. And I think I agree with what you said about it. Like one copy is good. And I think a lot of that is just you really never want to draw two of these together. If you do, you're going to have a bad time
if you draw
because
two red peace of minds, oh no.
yeah, because like the red one doesn't pitch to play the other one, and you can't make use of double ponder even if you like pitch your two cards to play. Like it's just really bad. So I think in general that's like a very good rule for people to keep in mind is that if there's a card that you never want to see in multiples, you probably just shouldn't be playing two, especially you shouldn't be playing more than one, especially in limited where your deck is only 30 cards. Like it's not that hard for it to happen.
Yeah, and if it happens in one of your matches, and if you lose because of it, that's you're throwing your that could just be the difference in top aiding the skirmish or not. So just don't
Yeah.
put yourself through it.
Yeah, even if it's like I don't know what the percentage is, but even if it's like 3% of hands it comes up, like 3% is a lot. Like if putting a card in your deck lowers your win rate by 3%, that is huge. That's like actually really big.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just throwing numbers out there. I haven't done the math on it, but don't play two.
Okay, let's move on to the off meta decks that you can play in this format. I want to talk about Riptide a little bit. Riptide, if you have exactly Collapsing Trap, I think this deck is pretty real in fatiguing your opponent out. You can just play like a 40 card fatigue deck. Just make sure all your cards block for 3 or 2, and then you just block everything. Have some red arrows, so then you can, have a 2 card hit for six hands, which is decent. You just play all of your 2 for 6s, and you just force your opponent to block, and then you block out with all the rest of your cards, and you end up fatiguing your opponent as long as you have like 5 or 6 cards more than your opponent. I seen this deck come together once. One of our local guys put it together, and you know, the deck was good. I almost died to it. He just hit me with like just big enough arrows, and I was down to 1 life. I ended up winning that game because I top deck Codex of Inertia into Codex of Inertia, and then the card I put into the arsenal with the Codex Inertia actually bricked his arsenal, and then like I high rolled him too hard. Honestly, I probably should have lost that game. Like if he just drew a trap in like to the arsenal or in his hand that deals 1 damage to me, I'm dead because I was at 1 life, and he didn't. So I took it down. But yeah, that game was too close for comfort.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I haven't played as or against Riptide at all, but I could see it makes sense to me that like a pool with like if you can play enough cards, you have some traps, you have lots of good red arrows. I think he'd like still even kind of like some pumps in Riptide. Like they're not bad to have.
Yeah, like if you have the pumps on the turns, like you can line them up, right? Like if you don't have to just always block, but I think just as a default, like if you just like try to block out Arachne and like just take the 1 damage from the spider's bite every turn, it's not they don't do too much damage. Or like the other way around against Azuri, like if you're blocking with like a bunch of your defense reactions, like the spider's bite's not really debuffing those, so you can find ways to block a bunch of damage from Missouri pretty well.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that my ranger pool, I had a number of close ranger pools, and it felt like even though ranger doesn't come together as much, it felt like it came together more than ninja did. Ninja felt just really hard. Like I think if you're Benji, you need basically all good go again cards in order to have that deck be a real deck. And if you're playing like even like a few kind of mediocre cards where you might not be able to get value out of your hand, it's a huge problem, especially when everything blocks two and then gets debuffed by spider's bite. So really is blocking more like one. Like you need to be able to very consistently just dump out your entire hand. And if you can't do that, yeah, I don't think ninja's where you want to be. And I think similarly, Katsu needing the combo lines is pretty rough. I guess if you just open like the amazing surging gust wave bonds of ancestry with mask of many faces Katsu deck, like maybe you can get there. I just don't know how realistic that really is. I never saw it all weekend.
Honestly, I think if you open 3 red surging strikes, I think it's enough. Like you might just be able to get people with 3 red surging strikes.
No, it's not enough.
No, you seen someone with 3 red surging
I
strikes?
had I had two reds and a yellow, and it was unplayable because I had one blue descending gust wave.
Okay,
Like
okay.
you need the whole thing. I also had a ninja pool with it had like most of the bonds line and like a few of each piece, and then I just realized that even though I had the bonds line, I didn't have anything to get with the bonds line. Like I didn't have
Oh,
redundant combo cards. Like it had like one red like of whatever, like one red 3 for 0, but I didn't have like other cards that I could get into the grave. And I'm just like, this is so sad. Like it feels like it could be good. Like I have a lot of very strong cards and it's just not there.
yeah, I guess so. You do need the multiple copies of the cards to get with the bonds as well. So, ooh, that is pretty rough.
Yeah, it's just really a lot for your sealed deck. I think in draft, if Ninja is open and you can just have free reign over it, like you're gonna have a pretty crazy deck. But
I'm just thinking of the ideal situation where you can go like pitch blue, surging strike, Kodachi, attack for 6 with cut down to size or something. That'd be an insane
yeah,
turn, like 14 damage or 13 damage.
yeah. Yeah, I think if you have enough consistency, it's good. It's just man, the two blocks really hurt because like if you're playing too many of the big attacks and you just have like two blocks and big attacks, like you just I don't know, you just don't have good ways to leverage those cards. Like it's really hard. Like because I feel like Ninja wants to be getting value out of like their Kodachis and their cards in hand, and if you're trying to do that and just play like medium-ish hands, it's you get so punished for having all two blocks.
Okay, anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I had a lot of fun playing Outsiders sealed pre-release. Even if the format does feel weighted towards Assassin, I think that the games were and like the games were very grindy as well. I still think it was really fun. I actually kind of enjoyed the low power level format. Just like you said, it feels like you get blown. There's a lot less room to get blown out. Whereas like Five Mirrors or even like Briar in Tales of Aria, honestly, like the games could just be so explosive and it felt like, oh, I stumble once I lose.
Yeah, I think in this format you get to block more. Do you get to play your cards more often.
Yeah. And I kind of think that this is like a good direction for limited in general, I think. If the games are just a little bit slower, I think it creates a better draft experience or limited experience in general.
I don't know about draft yet. This
Yeah.
might be a 2 turn combo format in draft where like ninja is broken and ranger gets to snuff you out of the game the on like turn 1 or 2 or something.
Yeah, there's definitely some very powerful things that you can be doing. It'll be interesting to see how much that all comes up.
Hmm.
Imagine getting a dominated arrow from Azalea. It's like dominate for like 11. You get a frailty and a blood rot pox. Go.
Oh my god, on turn 1. You
Yeah.
draw up and you're like, well, my blades don't do any damage. I have to pay 3 for the blood rocks pox.
Yeah. And you're down 8 life or whatever. It sounds rough.
That
So
does
I
sound rough.
yeah. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see how it drafts, but I think that there is some decently powerful stuff you can do. It's just a matter of how consistently you can do that powerful stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I think let's wrap it up. It's should be about an hour now.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. As always, We'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Let us know how your pre-release experience went. In particular, did you have the same experience with us? I think most people saw lots of Assassin, but did you maybe get to see an Azalea or one of the ninjas doing well? Would love to hear about that, and maybe even what those decks look like if you remember, because Jay and I didn't get to experience that in our very limited sample size. Other than that, you can get in touch with Jay on Twitter at UedaJ, or you can find me on Twitter at YukiLeeBender. And you can also email us at onthebauble@gmail.com and send us any of your questions or feedback that way. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope that you have a fun release weekend, pull lots of sweet cards, and just enjoy the new set. I think there's so much to look forward to.
Are you going somewhere this weekend? Are you going to the East Coast this weekend?
Yeah, so I'm actually leaving on Thursday, flying to Toronto, and then Nia's driving me to Chicago because flights to Toronto were cheap and flights to Chicago were not cheap. So that's why I am going very far out of my way. But anyways, I think it's about like a 7-hour drive from Toronto to Chicago, 7-8 hours.
What's the format?
It's going to be CC, and all the new cards are going to be legal. So it'll be right on the release weekend, and it'll be kind of the first major tournament with all the new cards. This is I think it's called the Fab Brawl. It's run by Realm Games, and they're collabing with MinMax Games. I think MinMax is actually hosting it, but it's like a series run by Realm Games that feeds into their invitational at the end of the year. It's a 5K with, I sort of mentioned it before, but it's just a 5K with gold foil and PTI for first as well. So pretty decent tournament.
Do you know what deck you're playing already, or are you gonna test that out like throughout this week, essentially?
Yeah, I'm continuing to test. I would say that I'm pretty likely to play Lexi, but I think Azalea is also very strong. I imagine I'll go with one of the Rangers. For a long time, I thought I would explore Ranger and have Icelander as a backup, but I don't know. The Rangers feel really good. I think that they might be the decks to beat, and especially in first week when there's maybe I think a lot of people are kind of aware that Ranger's strong, but I think that with lists not as solidified, just if we're able to put together a more tuned Ranger list than other people, I think that that's a pretty good spot to be.
6 codexes.
Yes, 6 codexes. Codexes are good cards.
Yeah,
I'll let people guess which ones, but the codexes are real good cards.
Yeah, I'm. It's not that good of testing, but I'm like sometimes playing Azuri on Talishar, and the 3 codexes pretty good. I might go up to 6 codexes as well.
Are you running frailties right now?
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes a lot
yeah.
of sense.
The card is just like gross. Like it's just so gross.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I've been on the receiving end of some Azuris going Codex of Frailty into like either Command and Conquer or Leave No Witnesses. They both feel terrible.
Yeah, it's the gross part is like if you get to attack with Spider's Bite first, and then if they
Yeah.
take it, you attack with Command and Conquer. You look at your hand, you're just like, I lose my arsenal no matter what, and a card in hand, and I can't block it out. I give you all my armor, and then I start losing to Surgical Extraction late game.
Yeah, yeah. It's the fact that it puts a card in Arsenal to target with your Arsenal hate is is really really strong, and then it draws you a card on top of all of it. If that wasn't enough.
Yeah, the Ponder token's great. Just make sure you
Yeah.
have Crown of Providence just in case.
Yeah, and I think one of the tricks with a lot of the Codex decks is trying to build your deck in a way where most of your cards are reasonable in Arsenal. Like obviously there's going to be like better and worse arsenals, but for example, like I don't know, like I haven't really been trying that much Azuri, but like if some of your blues are stealth cards and you can like use them to stealth stuff in, and it's like sort of like
No,
it's like
Yuki.
two resources that you can arsenal. That seems okay.
Every blue in the deck is a stealth card, other than the reactions, and then the reactions you can still play from Arsenal is great.
Yeah, see, exactly. Blues that you can play from Arsenal, very good with Ponder.
Yeah, as well as just honestly, just Crown of Providence is insane.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Crown of Providence, just turning your mediocre card into another random card is usually pretty good.
Okay, I think that will wrap it up for the sign off.
Good night, everyone. Enjoy your release weekend if you're getting up to any events or just experiencing the cards for the first, well, I guess the second time if you did pre release, but still.
Yeah, be curious on the pull rates on some of the mythics because I know that's a little bit more rare this time around.
Yeah, it does seem like they lowered it a little bit, which I think in theory should shift some of the value out of L's and into M's, which feels like an okay place to be.
Yeah, I think either or is fine. The market will figure that out, and we'll see. I'm just wondering how much the Marvel cards are going to be worth in a little bit.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. They seem like they might be pretty rare.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.